did that correctly, you should all see, I'm going to go into presenter mode. You should see a big slide with the title of this presentation. Does that look good?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Victor. Victor, for now, if you want to mute your microphone just while we go through this, that might be helpful. And then you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, okay?
Oh, okay.
All right, thanks. Good job.
Daniel, I'm sorry, I have a question. I'm not able to read the old slides because we have the video that cover it.
Yes. So if you look at the top of the panel that shows the strip, you know, the little strip of videos, there's a little icon that looks like a flat line. Do you see at the very top, there's like a thing to minimize the video panel or move it around at the top of the,
okay, got it.
Top of the strip. You got it?
Yes.
Okay, good. That has some different settings where you can experiment to get the video placed where you want it. All right? Okay, well, let's see here. Away we go. So in this meeting, we're going to talk about some basics of the interface, many of which I already mentioned, but we'll go over those real quick. We're going to talk about how to set up a meeting, some basic meeting settings and things that are good to know when you're creating a meeting, some general tips for facilitation and keeping students engaged. I'll give you a few basic strategies if something goes wrong to help students stay connected or to make sure that they're still hearing you and seeing what you're sharing. And then we'll talk about resources for more training and take some questions. And if you have an urgent question or something that you think is really relevant to what we're talking about, what I'm showing at that moment, the best thing to do is put it in the chat box, send it to the whole room, to everyone, and then one of the co-hosts in here with me will let me know if it's something that we should stop for, or they may just chat back to you and answer your question. Okay? So first things first, we already talked about the microphone, right? In the lower left of the Zoom interface, there is a button to mute and unmute your microphone. If it has a red line through it, you're muted. If it doesn't, you are not muted, and we can hear everything that is happening at your house or wherever you are. So the general rule, we like to tell people to just stay muted by default. I actually set this meeting up so that when you all came in the room, your microphones will be muted by default. And as the host, I have the ability to mute you if I need to. With your camera, it's the same thing. You can click that button, the little camera icon button, to turn your camera off and on. You're welcome at any point in the meeting if you want to try it out. It will just show your name on a black screen when you turn your camera off, and then you can just click it again to reveal your camera whenever you're ready. Sometimes people need to move around during meetings or like go to a new location because suddenly kids have come home or something got noisy. So I usually just turn my camera off, move to a new place, and then turn it back on if that happens. Next to both the microphone icon and the camera icon, there's a little upward pointing arrowhead. And if you click that, you'll see a panel that has more options for the microphone or the camera. And one of the things that I want to point out here, there's an option, see where the middle arrow is pointing horizontally, there's an option to test your speaker and microphone. You don't need to do this right now. It seems like everybody has been able to hear me so far. But if you want to test your microphone at some point, or you need to make a recommendation to a student to help them out, this will bring up a little panel and it'll let them do a quick test recording, and it'll play a little chime to test their speakers, and it's something only that they will see and hear. So they can do that even when they're in a live meeting to try to troubleshoot anything that comes up with their speakers or microphone. This is also where you can change the microphone. So if you have a headset on, or you have another monitor plugged in and it has a separate microphone, you may see multiple microphone options. So this is a good place just to double check if you have a nice microphone or one that's closer to where you're sitting. You want to make sure that that's the one that Zoom is using. Also, there's an option just like this for the camera. And so right now I have an external monitor, like a nice big fancy monitor with its own webcam, but I also have my laptop camera. And this is where I can choose to go back and forth between the two cameras. I will not switch them right now because then you're probably going to see my laundry on the drying rack or something here in my guest bedroom. But that's where you go if you need to change the camera. We already talked a little bit about this in the very beginning as people were arriving early. But if you switch back and forth, there's something called the gallery view and the speaker view. Now, while I'm sharing my screen, it's not as obvious. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a second, and you all can try this yourselves. In the upper right corner, you'll notice that you have the ability to go back and forth between the sort of tiled gallery view where it's a lot of little equal size squares, or you can use speaker view where it will show the person who's actively speaking. Now I notice right now, like, oh yeah, that's right, because I'm the host, I will just see, I don't see a green light around mine, but I want to make sure if you're in speaker view, you all see me, right? And it's mine is bigger than the other videos. Okay, good job. So thank you for the reassuring nods. I'm just going to click the screen share button again, and I'm going to go back into screen sharing mode so you can see my slides again. All right, just go back into presenter mode. Okay, Sarah, are you seeing my slides now? Okay, thanks. So that's where that little icon lives. It's pretty easy to figure out. You just toggle back and forth if you want to go between views. I normally leave it in the gallery view a lot because I like to be able to see everyone's faces. The participants button is where you can see who's currently in the meeting. It's also the place where you can go, oh, Joe, thank you for updating this slide so quickly. Excuse me. So there's an option here for students to raise their hand. And there's also options for them to respond. If you ask a quick question and you want them to say yes or no, there's a few other things, like there's an option under the more button if they want to indicate that they need to take a break. I think that you have to actually go into this panel and look at it to know that they're posting things there, because I don't usually like hear a sound if they click something. There's no little helpful chime. But if you're looking at the participants panel as the host, you'll be able to see if people are clicking things there. You're welcome to play around with that and click it. Just know that I'm going to assume you're experimenting if you test it out right now, and I'm not going to treat it like a serious emergency that you need an urgent bathroom break or something like that. Okay? This is also where I, as the manager of the meeting, can control if I need to mute somebody or I need to see who all is in the meeting. And I can even kick somebody out if I have to, but hopefully it won't come to that. I'm sure you'll all behave yourselves. Also, I mentioned the chat feature. It seems like most people figured out where that option was already, and the distinction between messaging everyone versus sending a message to a particular person. It's very easy to accidentally message someone privately and not realize, you know, that you had the wrong option in the menu. So don't feel bad if that happens to you. Just make sure you look at it before you send your message, especially if it's a private message and you're complaining about how frustrating this whole experience is or how much you don't like this webinar. Don't send that to the whole room. Just send that to your friend in the meeting privately. Oh, also one thing to know, people always ask this, and I'm sorry, but the answer is no. You cannot see if students are sending private messages to each other during your Zoom meeting, saying things about you, but I promise you it doesn't happen nearly as often as you think. I just feel it. I feel optimistic that it's not happening to me very often. When you want to record a session, you have this record button here. Now you as the students probably also see a record button, but keep in mind that if you wanted to start recording, it will normally pop up a panel that asks me as the host if I'm okay with that. So don't try this right now. Just know that as the host, I control when I start the recording. And when I click this button, it will give me the option to record it on my computer or to record it on the cloud. Record on my computer means that at the end of the meeting, a little panel will pop up and it'll say, processing file or downloading video or something like that, and it'll spin for a little while, and then it'll save a recording of that video on your computer, and then you have to find some way to share that with your students. So my recommendation is to use the record to cloud option, and what that does is it puts it in a particular place in your Zoom account, and I'll show you that now. Before I jump into that, any questions? I noticed the chat, there was a couple little blinking chat moments.
No, you're good, Daniel. One thing I'd add just about the chat is while it can be useful for maybe sharing a file or a link to a web page, in general, it's probably best to have your students unmute themselves and ask a question if they have a question, because I'm sure, just as Daniel said, he's seeing some blinking stuff, but he's not really sure. Unless he clicks on it, that really takes his attention away from the actual facilitation.
Yeah.
And so in general, we recommend if your students have questions, or if you're asking for them to share answers and responses, to have them go ahead and unmute themselves and share that way.
Yeah, it's also easier when you're not sharing your screen as the host. So when you're in that gallery view and you can see everyone's faces and you're having more of a conversational moment, in that case, you can also kind of look and see if people are posting something in the chat. You can have multiple things going at once. When you're sharing your screen, it kind of takes over everything, and it's a little harder sometimes to notice if something's popped up in the chat. It just kind of flashes on my screen for a second, but then I have to stop what I'm doing and go over there. So that's a good point, Joe.
Daniel?
Yeah.
Are you using multiple screens so that you're, perhaps using one screen to share with us and then you're seeing us or something else elsewhere?
So technically, yes. Right now, I have two screens. I have my computer, my laptop connected to a bigger monitor, but keep in mind, that's not necessary at all when you're doing a Zoom meeting. It's a nice little bonus, but you can absolutely manage these panels and the different windows with a single computer monitor. And I do that pretty regularly. Honestly, it's rare that I have a second monitor when I'm doing Zoom meetings. It just requires a little more. People just have to be patient, and you just have to say, give me a second. I'm just going to get out of this and jump over here, and it's fine. So I don't want anybody to feel too intimidated that I have a bonus monitor. So my slide right now that you should be seeing has the recording section. This is actually Joe's account, and you can see his cloud recordings listed here. So I'm going to show you in a minute how I log into my Zoom account in a web browser, and one of the sections here will be your cloud recordings if you've recorded something like Sarah's currently recording this session. And then we'll go later to this area to get the secret link that I'm going to share with you all later and put on our website with the recording of this session. The nice thing about this is because I don't have to download this video, I just go here and get a link to it, and then I can share that by email. I can post it in D2L. It's very flexible and easy to share with people. Whereas if you have the video on your computer, it's just one extra step now to figure out how to get that video in a system or a space where people will be able to watch it. Okay, so we have arrived at the moment where I'm going to jump out of the slides, or actually I'm going to stay in my browser here and continue sharing that. I'm going to move over here to the sign-in screen, so everyone can. Oh, let me unpause this. It says sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front. Can you all see the login screen for DePaul? Oh, no? Yeah? Let me just stop sharing for just a second and start the share again, because I switched from my slides over to another tab in my browser. And so just to be on the safe side, I'm just going to bring up that share again. Okay, how are we doing now? Everybody see a big blue DePaul login page? All right, good. So let me just I need to move my own video panel around here because I'm getting a few layers going at the same time. I'm just going to sign into my account so you can see all what this process looks like. So you'll notice on this main login screen, when you go to depaul.zoom.us, you're going to have these three options. I'm going to recommend that you just click sign in if you're a beginner to this, and I'm going to teach you what I think is the simplest way to get up and running. When you click the sign in option, it's going to ask you for your Campus Connect credentials. Okay, mine are already in here, memorized. And then it's going to take you to a screen that looks like this, okay? Now from this screen, I have a couple different options, and there are multiple ways that you can set up a new Zoom meeting. I'm going to show you the way that I think for complete beginners is the easiest, but I've had many interesting conversations with other people in our department about the best way to show this, so I'm happy to stick around at the end and show you some alternative ways to set up a meeting if you want to see those, okay? Good so far? Good, thank you. All right, so see here, there's this personal meeting room option. It's kind of squished a little bit because my browser, I had to make it a little small while I'm sharing it with you. But if I go here and I click personal meeting room, this section of the site is where I can find what's called the join URL.
Wait. So that looks like it went to schedule a meeting, Daniel.
Oh, sorry, let me go back to the previous screen. I think the little links are overlapping a little bit.
Try again.
This is the fun of a live demonstration. You know what? Let me just zoom out. There we go. Okay, zoom out on that a little bit. And then just sorry, you all, this is just the thing that I'm running into because I'm sharing my screen with you. This will be a little easier to click the right thing when you're doing it on your own. Okay, so Now I'm in the personal meeting room section, okay? When you go here, you have this join URL, and that is like you can think of it like your virtual office. It's like this reserved special spot just for you that Zoom has created that's always available if you need to share this link with someone and you want to jump into a Zoom meeting with them, okay? I have customized my Zoom URL so that it has my name on the end of it, and I'm going to show you how you can do that too. The reason why I'm showing you how to do it this way is because I find there are lots of times where I need to set up a quick meeting, or I have to tell somebody my address over the phone, or I want them to just be able to join on short notice or something. And it's really nice if I just have an easy to remember web address where people can go and it's easy to spell and all of that, okay? So this is where you actually can copy your join URL, but if you follow my next step, you'll just have it memorized and it's really easy then to share it with people. All right, so this is where I'm just gonna look at my notes real quick. I have to go to profile because I always forget where this is. So under the profile section, this is where you see the option to customize your personal meeting link, okay? So the first thing I did was went to personal meeting room, and that was where the link, the join URL is for your personal meeting room. But to customize it, you click this customize option under the profile section. And then you'll notice see how it made the little box here editable? So I can zoom in just a bit on that. And now if I want, I have the option to change this end part, the thing that comes after depaul.zoom.us. All right? That's how you can change the URL for that. Now there's also the option to change your personal meeting ID. I don't want to go into too much detail because we're already at 8:21, but you can also set that. I have mine changed to my phone number, so it's also really easy to memorize. But the first step that I'd recommend for everyone is just to learn and customize your personal meeting link. And there's some little rules here to remind you here what the rules are for what you can do to make your personal meeting link easy to remember. Okay, any questions about that?
I have a quick question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. When you've created that URL, you said you send it to people. You send it to them how?
So I literally just copy it and I paste it.
And then how do you send? You just email it to people? What do you do?
It depends. So sometimes I email it to them. Sometimes if it's something I've thought of in advance, I've made a news item in D2L, you know, on the news feed that's on your course site when you first go into D2L. If you're not familiar with that, we have plenty of guides online for all of that. But then I just paste the link directly into that news item, just like I would in an email.
Okay. Say that I'm going to have a class session like this on a Tuesday, and then want to have it again on a Thursday. Do they need a new link, or can they use the old one?
No. So this is what I like about this approach that I'm showing you, is if you just memorize your meeting URL, your special dedicated room, it's nice because you can use that over and over again.
Okay. So I can just tell the students you need to be on at this time and that.
Yep. Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So if we
I
go
have a question, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can they use the telephone number to join the Zoom meeting?
No, not the personal meeting ID. There is a telephone number, but I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. It's not my first choice for the way students should join, but we'll come back to that. But it's different from the personal meeting ID. Because this is my actual cell phone number. I've just made this easy for me to remember too, in case someone there's a longer story there. Normally they won't be asked for a meeting ID, but sometimes it's nice that that's easy to remember too, in case someone says, oh, I see this screen and it's asking me for the meeting ID.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so real quick, the option to edit this meeting is under meetings. Just gonna show you one more quick thing. And then personal meeting room, if we go back here, let me just zoom out a little. So this is also, so I was on this screen just a second ago. Remember, this is the one where I found my address for my personal meeting room and copied it. Now, if you click this edit this meeting button down here, this is the spot that will allow you to change these types of settings here. So remember earlier I mentioned that I set it up so that everyone was muted when they first come in the room, their microphones are muted. that's where that option lives. And so for my personal meeting room, I have my settings just the way that I want them. You don't need to worry about most of these. One thing that's helpful to know is usually I don't recommend people enable the waiting room feature. It puts all the students in like a little holding spot, and then you have to click every time they want to join. You have to click to bring them one by one out of the waiting room and into your room like we're here now. So you'll notice that wasn't the experience that you had this time around. As soon as you clicked the link, you went directly in. I also usually select enable join before host, which is the reason why as you all click the link, you were all able to come in. And if you had come here before I was even in the room, you would be able to talk to each other while you wait for me to get here. So that's kind of up to you if you like that option. If it scares you a little bit, you can try not having enable join before host selected. And then students will just see a little message that says, please wait for the host to begin this meeting. And that means they're just waiting on you until you join. But as soon as you go in there, the meeting will begin automatically. You don't have to bring them out of the waiting room feature. Okay? I know that's a lot of information. Please keep in mind, you can go, it'll be so much easier when you go in and you log into your Zoom account and you play around with these little settings. And it's very easy to just make a quick link, share it with someone and ask them, did it go the way that they expected? Okay, so quick thing when you're sharing, one last thing about sharing the URL is when I send the link or I post it as a news item in D2L, I usually try to tell the students, if possible, try to join from a quiet space. Also try to test the link in advance. So if I allow them to join before I'm there, they can click that link and it'll actually go into the room and they can test their microphone or just click around to get more comfortable with the buttons. There won't be anyone there, but sometimes I find that the students find that a little reassuring. And you'll get a little automatic email usually by default whenever someone is trying to go into your room. So don't be alarmed if you see that. It just might mean that the students are clicking it to practice or to test it out. I also usually like to tell the students to download the app in advance. So if they are going to be on a phone or a tablet, that's really helpful for them to go to the App Store, the Google Play Store, and download the Zoom app. If they just search for Zoom, it should be the first thing that comes up. And then that way they can join from a mobile device if they can't join from like a desktop computer or a laptop. Whoops, let me just stop there for a sec. All right, how's everything going? How's the chat question situation? We doing okay there? Oh, all right, good. So I'm gonna, if you have a quick question, I could take maybe 1 or 2 questions, but I'm just gonna jump back into the slides. Yeah, Dolores, what's up? You gotta make sure to unmute your microphone.
So the Zoom app will not be located on the D2L page, as I understand that Panopto will.
You mean when you're in your D2L course and you're trying to access those tools?
Well, just as a consolidation for students and faculty alike, it seems, at least as I understood it, I don't really know Panopto that well. I just sat in on a seminar today. They seem to say that it will be available on the D2L page.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how Kevin phrased that because he knows Panopto better than I do. I know you can access Panopto through the D2L interface, but I'm not sure if maybe he meant they're doing something special to make it more visible to students.
Okay, okay, it's not important. So I'll send them the link.
So Dolores, Zoom can be integrated in that way. It's just more complicated and on the back end, and we're really covering the simplest way to get up and running here. And the simplest way is to get that personal URL and share it with students. And you could do that in a news item, through email,
and
whatever kind of communications.
There is technically a way in the D2L interface to create a new Zoom meeting, but it has more steps to it, and I just think this approach is a little simpler. Sarah, did you want to say?
The points Kevin made, when you work with Panopto, if you work through D2L, it doesn't have to confirm your identity numerous times because you're already D2L.
Right.
So advice was go to DL, Panopto on the right side, whatever column, I can't remember, like additional features.
Sure.
Panopto is right there and you can start to work there.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to circle back to any Panopto questions, I'm more than happy to hang out. I have a very boring Thursday night lined up, so I'm here for you as long as you need. Okay, so good though on the process to set up a meeting. Basically, you sign into your account at DePaul.zoom.us. You sign in. If you've never signed in before, that's going to activate your pro account automatically. And then you go to those different sections I showed with your personal meeting room or your profile to get rolling with your kind of dedicated URL that's your always ready kind of virtual office space. And then there are other ways to set up additional rooms if you need specialized rooms for different things, but we won't go into that right now. All right, so let me just jump back over, find my slides again in all of these windows, and then share with you. Part of running a successful Zoom meeting is the art of quickly moving back and forth between your windows. Okay, let's go back into presenter mode. Everybody can see my slides, hopefully. Good. So, few quick facilitation tips. I know we're running a little long, sorry. Joe recommended that we make this thing 45 minutes, and I should have listened, but we're just gonna hang out and bear with me. You already know the bare minimum that you need to know to make a Zoom meeting starting right away. So just be proud of yourselves. You already have the basic info you need. You could go out and chat with family and see your kids and grandchildren or whatever you want to do. So, few general tips. I usually ask students to I remind them to turn on their microphones before speaking. You want to remind them to mute their microphones when they're not speaking. And then generally speaking, hold on for a minute when you pose a question to the group and realize that sometimes it takes people 5 or 10 seconds to even find the microphone button or change back to the Zoom window and unmute themselves. You all might, already have noticed that. So if you're trying to have a conversation and students are all muted, you want to give yourself more time than usual to let students unmute or turn on their camera or get back in the game, so to speak. Quick, simple tip here. Keep in mind that if everybody has their camera turned on like you all do now, it makes the meeting feel more personal, more humanized. That's all well and good. And I really try hard to get my students to turn those on. It can be like pulling teeth sometimes if they're shy. But you may also have some students who are maybe in a room where they haven't had a chance to clean up in a while and they're a little embarrassed, or they're just not really dressed for a meeting, or maybe they just don't have a webcam. And so I try to be flexible and just say, hey, it'd be really great if you could turn on your cameras, but if you're not in a place right now where you feel comfortable with that, that's also okay. And that's really a personal decision for you as the instructor on how hard you want to press them to use their cameras during the meeting. Now, I've been sharing my screen with you a whole bunch, so I'm going to go through this option pretty fast. But the share screen button is the way that you share your screen, and students also have the option to do this if you allow them as the host. So when you click the share screen button, what you'll normally see is this panel that shows you all the things that are available to be shared. So this first thing that's circled is called desktop 1. It's desktop 1 because Joe had 2 monitors when he made this screenshot. So that was the first monitor, and it will show you like a little preview of what's currently on that screen when you go to share it. Desktop 2 in this case is just here because when Joe did the screenshot, that was his second monitor and what was on that one. The whiteboard option is like a virtual dry erase board. It has a big white background and there's like doodling tools, and has a lot of little drawing and text and little symbols and things like that that you can place on there. And then the other main thing I wanted to point out here is it'll show you other application windows, including your web browser window. So don't accidentally select your Microsoft Outlook email window if you don't want to show all your students your email. My personal recommendation is usually, instead of sharing your whole desktop, pick the specific application you want to show, like PowerPoint or your web browser. In this case, I'm using Google Slides through my web browser, so I'm sharing with you just my Safari browser window that I want to show you. And then that way you don't see a bunch of other notifications. I don't have to worry about accidentally clicking something and showing you something on my desktop that I didn't want to share, a tax return or whatever might be hiding on there, okay? Yeah, Ginger, what's up?
Are we able to run a video? Would one of the things be?
Yeah, that's my next slide.
And the voices and the sound is good and all that?
That's a matter of opinion, but let me show you here what we have on this slide. So that is perfect timing. Ginger was asking about sharing video clips. If you want to share a video clip, the most important thing to keep in mind is that when you go to share your browser window, let's say, where the YouTube video is available, or your PowerPoint slide where you're playing that video, make sure that you have these two checkboxes selected: share computer sound and optimize screen share for video clip. Sorry, that's a little small, but just remember there's two little options at the bottom that you might need if you're going to share some kind of video or audio or multimedia with your students. Now, the big warning that I'll give you here is when you're sharing something like this, if it's a longer video clip, you may be better off just telling students to go over to, put in the chat a link to a YouTube video, or share something with them to go over to a separate window or application where they're going to watch that video on their own in another window. And then you bring them back. You say, okay, everybody unmute your microphones or come back to the Zoom meeting now, and they'll talk about it there. My recommendation is just because you may find, depending on internet connectivity issues or the students, how new their computer is, it may be a little hard for them to be in the Zoom meeting and be showing the video through the Zoom meeting. But with shorter video clips, it normally isn't a big problem. Just for longer stuff or very high resolution things, you may have better luck just getting them to share with them a link to the video to view in a separate thing outside of Zoom. Does that make sense? Yeah, Dolores. Oh, I think you might be muted.
Can we go back and forth somehow? I'd like to really be able to show some more extended links. Can we be in Zoom and share an outside link at the same time?
Yeah, so if I wanted to do that with you all right now, you all can still stay here in the Zoom room. I'd probably just mute everyone's microphones or make sure everybody's muted, or say, turn your cameras off while you watch the video or something like that. And then in the chat, my simplest solution would be just in the chat, put a link to the YouTube video. If it's on your computer hard drive, that's gonna be a little trickier because you're not gonna have a web address that you could just send them to. But if they click that link in the chat, it'll just open a new browser window for them, and they'll watch it there while the Zoom meeting is still happening and they're still in the Zoom session. Now, I just want to make it clear, I don't do a whole lot of this in my line of work. I never share video clips through Zoom. So you may find that it works just fine. And feel free to test it out by sharing it through Zoom itself when you go to do screen share. And it might be okay, but I just want you to have the other option so you know that if students are saying it's problematic or you're seeing some kind of slowdown, the other way to get around that is to have them just go watch it outside of the Zoom interface in a separate browser window. Okay? Everybody okay? All right, good. So I've just got a few more quick things to run through, and then I promise I'm going to answer all your remaining lingering questions. Let me just jump back to my screen sharing, and I'm gonna select my slides. All right, so I'm not necessarily following my own best practices on this, but it is good if you can to break up your screen sharing every 10 to 20 minutes. So if you have an activity or something you can do like I just did where I jumped out of screen sharing mode, it's nice because everybody can see each other a little better. And that's just better if you're meant to have a discussion at that point. So it takes a little practice, but it is nice if you can, go back and forth. This is also a good opportunity when you break out of screen sharing mode to have them maybe brainstorm or share problems that they're stuck on, or share things in the chat that they, resources or whatever is relevant to the lesson that you're doing at the time. Or you could go into whiteboard mode, which is still sort of technically like screen sharing, but it's a way for them to be more active participants. Okay, so now you have a chance to try the annotate tool. So if you look up at the top of your this is kind of like an inception moment where I'm showing you a screenshot of the thing inside of the interface where you actually can access the thing. So if you look up at the top, you should see a little view options button with a little downward pointing arrow. Do you see that? There's like a little green stripe showing who's sharing their screen. Thank you, Dolores. And then there's like a little downward pointing arrow. That menu has a couple different helpful things. One of them is an exit full screen option, which will take this whole Zoom application and make it not full screen anymore. So if you don't want the whole Zoom meeting to take over your entire screen, that's how you get out of full screen mode when someone is sharing something with you. And also there's an option there to annotate, and I can see people already found the annotate option. So that little toolbar that comes up, it's kind of funny because I have a screenshot here of the toolbar, and then you probably see the toolbar also floating around on top of that. So that may be a little confusing, but you can use that toolbar to then click and make little shapes and doodle and all of that. So I know we could sit here and play with the annotate tools forever. Yeah, Joe.
But this can be really good if you, because you can have your students share their screen if they're working on a problem or an essay or whatever, and you can annotate, and likewise you could have students annotate their peers' work as well. This could be good in the breakout rooms. And Daniel, you know, I know we're running long on time.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of people ask for information on breakout rooms. I know we're meant to cover it in a little bit, right?
Yeah, so that's the next slide. So I am going, oops, whoops. Co-host, can you help me and clear, do you have the ability to clear all our annotations, our lovely doodles on my slide? This will be a good test. Oh, there we go. Somebody found it. Oh, okay. So we have officially exited the annotation portion of the presentation. Thank you, friends, for all your exciting doodles. But now I'm back in the driver's seat. So this screen shows you just a real quick reminder, if you want to have the breakout rooms ability in your Zoom meeting, it helps to just check in this particular spot in the Zoom interface, like where I was before when I logged into my account. There's a section where you can make sure that breakout rooms are available. And I don't want to walk through, we don't have time for me to show you exactly where this is, but I just want to point out that I'm pretty sure that this is enabled by default. Thanks, Joe's nodding. So you may not even need to do this, but if you don't see the breakout rooms option when you know that you're the host of a meeting and it's your own meeting room and you're logged in, it may be because this option here in your Zoom preferences wasn't turned on, okay? Again, we're gonna share the slides and the recording of all of this with you, and we can give you additional help if you wanna, you know, make sure that you find this setting. Now, when you're the host, you will see where the little number 1 is here with this thing circled. You'll see an icon, a special icon that only the host can see to create breakout rooms. When you click that, it'll show what's shown here in panel number 2, where it'll ask you if you want to automatically send students into breakout rooms or manually assign students to specific rooms. And then the third thing that it'll show you is what it created as a result of that. It'll give you a preview of where everybody's going to go in their different breakout rooms. And then the last step is to click open all rooms, and it'll send everyone to their breakout rooms. It'll actually pop up a little panel for each student that'll say, you're being invited to this breakout room. And it sort of teleports them into like a mini version of what we're doing right now, where just those students are all chatting in their own Zoom mini room. And then you as the host have the ability to bring them back into the main room whenever you're ready. So
to set it up every time, I'm thinking like if we do group projects, could I set it up so it defaults to those projects?
No, unfortunately, Zoom doesn't know who your students are and what groups you've assigned in like some other tool. So you have to manually do it every time if you want them to go into a specific group, unfortunately.
Okay, and you would just do that like prior to the start of the meeting then, or?
You know, you have to wait till everybody's in the meeting to be able to assign that. I mean, you can start assigning them to groups, but I just find it easier right when you're ready to do it to just say, hey, everyone, give me a minute. I'm just pulling up the panel. And then it's a little clumsy, but you have to kind of check little boxes to put them in the right spots.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have a better, fancier solution for that, but that's how I've done it.
And I have a question about these. Can the host hear what they say in the group? I teach the language, so that would be a good feature for me.
It's just like a miniature version of what we're doing right now. It looks and feels exactly the same, but it will only have the people in it who you put in that particular room.
So can I enter in their room? So
yeah.
From one room to another.
Yep. And again, I would practice it, tell the students the first time you do it, because it's the most advanced feature that we're talking about today. That's really, I have 1 or 2 more slides, but that's the fanciest thing we're going to cover today. And just be honest I find it helps to just be honest with my students and say, this is the first time I'm using this tool. Give me just a minute to get it set up. And then, you know, this is what I expect that it'll do. And you may find you accidentally pull them all out of the rooms, or, you know, you have to try it once or twice, but I find it's pretty intuitive.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so any other questions about breakout rooms before I wrap up?
Just one more question. Sorry about that. Once you set it up at the beginning of that session, can you continue to use that same breakout room setup throughout the entire session? Or do you have to reset it up every time?
Joe is not.
Yes, you can. You can keep the same setup. We've done that in the GLE sessions the last few times. Yeah.
So when you click the breakout rooms button again later in the meeting, by default it will have the groups that you already used earlier. No, Joe, did you catch that?
Sorry, I started looking at the chat. What was that, Daniel?
So when in that situation, when they go to click the breakout rooms option again later in the meeting to use it again, the panel will already show the groupings that they set up.
Correct.
For.
That's correct.
As long as it's within the same meeting session.
That's correct.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So Amy, I just learned something new. I mean, there's all kinds of little advanced things like that we all teach each other in our department all the time. All right. Any other breakout rooms questions before I jump back to slides? And then again, I'll stick around as long as you all like. Okay, so let me just share my screen again real quick. Okay, so generally speaking, there's a couple things that are my go-tos when there's trouble. So first of all, I try to warn the students if they can to check for Zoom updates. It's very similar to any other piece of software where if you're in the Zoom, if you're in a Zoom meeting or you've clicked the application, if they've already installed it, there's an option in the main menu bar to like look at your Zoom settings or preferences or whatever, and within that same spot is where you can check for updates. Usually when you launch the app too, it'll say if there's new updates that you need to install, but it can help sometimes when you're sharing the link with students to warn them that they may want to install Zoom updates if they haven't used Zoom in a while, or if they used it, a while back and maybe haven't run some updates. Also, I usually tell them to turn off their videos. That's a way to improve audio quality. I mentioned that earlier. It's kind of my go-to if there's a snag or like a slowdown with audio and video. If somebody really needs to, I might tell them to leave the meeting and then click the link again to come back into it. I know that's kind of like when the cable support person tells you to turn off your modem and turn it back on again. So my apologies for that very low-tech solution, but it can sometimes fix issues if like a student doesn't know why their microphone's not working or their speakers aren't working. And then as kind of last resort, they can restart their computer and try to rejoin. That usually takes a few minutes. Or you can share a dial-in number with them to call in by phone. Now, once we go through all the questions, if somebody wants me to show where that is or talk more about that, I can, but it's really a last resort. And keep in mind that while we're all maybe quarantined or using a lot more, phone data and whatnot, you may have mixed results with that. But what it is supposed to do is allow a student to call like a normal phone number and actually use a traditional phone call and not their data plan. But it only allows them to listen in on the session. I think maybe there may be some way to like push a button or something and talk, but it's basically just like as a last resort if you don't want them to miss out. But you can also record the session, and that session I might just, in that situation, have to tell some of them, if you're really all out of options and it's not working, they may have to watch the recording. One last thing, if you leave the meeting as the host, there are two ways you can leave. You can just leave and allow people to stay and keep talking, or you can click end meeting for all, and that kicks everyone out and ends the meeting completely. So just be aware, if you're the host and you go to end it, you'll have a special option that other people don't, which can kick everyone out. So just know that that's what will happen if you click it. And lastly, this slide, which you'll have access to later, has links to some useful support resources. The main thing I want you to take away from this is that support.zoom.us has really good short videos, long training videos, live webinars you can sit in on like this one, pre-recorded, archived webinars. There's ones just for educators. There's all sorts of different ones. And we have a few of our favorites recommended on the remote teaching page at go.depaul.edu/remote teaching, the same place where you found the link to this webinar to register. There's a little blurb under there where Joe's curated a few of our favorite resources there. And Zoom support, generally speaking, is really good. Their tutorials are really solid and their customer service has been great. I mean, they may be a little spread thin in the coming weeks or months, but I don't usually recommend going directly to the vendor for software support. But in the case of Zoom, I think the tutorials and whatnot are pretty good. All right, time for Q&A.
How do you get, this is a silly question, but how do you get the recording of the session and then share it with everyone? I did a session tonight and it ended up being like 10 different recordings.
Okay, did you do cloud? Did you select cloud recording?
I did.
Okay, I might have to look into that a little more because I'm not sure how it created 10 different recordings.
Yeah, I think, Amy, what happens is there's an audio only recording, and then depending on how many monitors you have set up, it can record it. There might be different streams for each monitor. There might also be, if you're sharing a lot of content, there might even be a stream just for the shared content.
I would say that might be a thing to follow up with your instructional designer about, because normally what happens is you just select record to cloud, and then when you go in your Zoom account to the recording section, there's one simple link that you can share with anyone. You can email it to them and it'll show them a video recording of this entire session.
Okay.
Daniel, if I have teach editing, so I need to see the student screens. Between Panopta, which I can record my lecture, and watching them to do their work on timeline, is it better to work a little bit in Panopta and a little bit Zoom? Which system most suited?
So Victor, it really comes down to whether you want to interact with them in real time. Like, is it an option for them to talk with you and work with you live like we're doing right now? Or would you rather record some things, share them, have them record something and share it with you, and have plenty of time as you go back and forth to look at things and compose your thoughts and email them with feedback? If you want to do it in real time, they could share their screens. With sharing something like video editing, you may notice some delays, but you could do that through the screen sharing feature in Zoom. If it's more like you recording a tutorial on how to do something in your video editing tool, and then you want them to record their process and share it with you so you can see what they're doing, that you would use what's called a screen casting tool like Panopto for recording what's happening. Panopto doesn't do live meetings. It's just for record something, share it like in an asynchronous way.
And for the technical, so to speak, program, when the student have to look and maybe play twice the process I did on the timeline, maybe it's better when it's recorded rather than live.
Yeah, it could be. We can
notice when I teach live, 2/3 of the class don't pay attention. And they ask the question 2 minutes later, so how do we do it? We just discuss it. They don't remember. So when it's up to them to look and play this video again, maybe it will work better.
Yeah, so I think as a general piece of advice for all of you, if you want to create little mini lectures or quick demonstrations or something that students will watch over and over again, if you can learn, keep in mind, we're in an emergency situation. I don't want to make you all feel like you have to learn 10 different tools. So this is just, if you feel comfortable, you can go to one of our webinars or read through our guides on Panopto. But Panopto is the best tool that we have that's free and available to all of you for doing little recordings like that. And it looked like, somebody raised their hand. Oh, Lisa, was it you? Yeah.
Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, yes, I just unmuted my mic. I had a question about one particular class that I'm going to be offering. I usually have students give paired presentations. Is there a way that I could have that happen via Zoom when we're all here together meeting at the same time? Can two of the students in different places manage to have both of them speaking, giving the presentation to the rest of us at the same time?
Yes, but what you'll need to do is have one person be the official screen sharer. So only one person can share their screen at a time. So someone in that pair has to decide to be the kind of PowerPoint master or the person who's advancing the slides and sharing what's on their computer screen. But
Right.
both of them can have their microphones unmuted and talk at the same time, all of us can unmute our microphones if we wanted to. It just gets a little chaotic if there are a lot of people in the room.
You've just answered my question about the one person being the designated screen sharer. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I feel like I'm on fire. I'm like knocking out questions left and right. Oh, it looks like Gerald has a question next.
I obviously missed this. Screen sharing, when we talk, I see the person talking. It switches to the person. Do you make that happen, or does it automatically depending on who's talking?
It's automatic depending on who's talking.
Okay, thanks. You did it. Bye.
Thanks.
Daniel?
Yes. Oh, hey, John. Dolores, I see your hand. We can go to you next.
I just had I'm sorry, who's next?
Yeah, you're next, John. Go ahead.
Okay. A slightly sensitive question. We just got an email today in the business school saying that all classes next term should be asynchronous and that there is insufficient bandwidth to do things through Zoom.
Ooh.
You know, we're all from different colleges here. I'm just wondering in the group if anybody else has received this word or what's the deal?
Now, Sarah, this sounds like an excellent time to wrap up the recorded portion of our meeting. Since we'll be sharing this later, I'm happy to give you some thoughts on that. But why don't we go